Hi, this is Nick Coons with the Libertarian Solution, doing my first video cast at night on the road. I've done quite a few of them in the daytime on the road, no problem. The light seems to be a little dim on here, so what I've done is on the passenger side, I have the visor down with the little mirror thingy open and the light shining on me. I'm at a stoplight right now, so if it turns out that I start moving forward and that impedes my view too much, I'm going to close that up and this podcast will be mostly in the dark, but you don't really care to look at me anyway. You just hopefully want to hear what I have to say. Hopefully that'll provide some benefit for you. So anyway, I had a listener who wrote in just recently asking about the tragedy of the commons. Now, that's something we've talked a lot about on the show. And essentially, for those who are not up to speed, it goes something like this. The tragedy of the commons is the idea that you have some public property. And here's kind of the scenario. Let's say you and 9 other people are farmers, and near adjacent to all of your farms is a piece of grazing land for your cattle. Now, it's finite. You don't have unlimited grass, so generally you'd have to, make sure you graze it responsibly, not let them overeat and that sort of thing. But because no one owns it, no one has an incentive to take care of it. Because if you, let's say, of one of the 9 farmers decided, what we're going to do is we're going to limit how much of our cattle can graze on that at what period of time, so we make sure we always have grass. The problem is that if you're the only one that does that, everyone else is going to benefit from your efforts. You'll benefit a little bit from your efforts, but it'll be completely disproportionate to the amount of effort you've put into it. The benefit won't be nearly as great. So no individual is going to do a lot to benefit it, because they know that everyone else is getting the benefit of it and none of them aren't. The individuals, everyone else pretty much isn't going to get proportionate what they put into it. So the statist argument for something like this is that you need to have the government control it. So the government has to control it, and essentially what they're saying is that the government's going to set regulations and limits on how much grazing you can be doing and that sort of thing. And the problem there is that this doesn't solve the tragedy of the commons, because government itself is the largest commons there is. And so you're going to have the same kind of tragedy where people are going to go into government and vote things disproportionately, and so the whole thing kind of works out the same way. But also, even putting that part of it aside, the bureaucrats within the government have no methodology of determining what is the proper amount of grazing, what is the types of grass or the times of day. Or I'm not a farmer, I don't know either, but neither is anyone in Congress or anyone in the government. They don't have this information. It's not their farm, it's not their cattle, and they don't know what's needed in order to produce a farm. That's something that the property owners figure out. So the libertarian solution to the tragedy of the commons is private property, more private property, not regulation over public property, but the elimination of public property in the form of making it private property. So there's all sorts of ways you can do it. You could split that land up 10 ways, and everyone has their own piece of grazing land. You could have one person who owns it, and they lease out the options for other people to own it, or to graze on it. And whoever's going to own it is going to have a legitimate and incentivized reason for wanting to maintain it, wanting to make sure that it's completely renewable, in the sense that they're always having grazing land available. And if you're the one owner and you're leasing out to everyone else, you have to graze it responsibly. You have to make sure that all the tenants are grazing responsibly, otherwise you have nothing left to lease out to them. And so you end up benefiting yourself short-term and not so much long-term. If everyone owns it individually, well then of course with your own land you've got to be careful with the grazing as well, because you want to make sure that you have adequate grazing in the future. That's essentially the tragedy of the commons. So the person who emailed me understood this and knew what the tragedy of the commons was, and he asks about the environment in terms of air. Let's say you've got a factory that's like 50 or 100 miles away, and they're putting smog and smoke and pollutants, real pollutants, not CO2, but actual bad stuff, into the air, and that's damaging your property. Well, you've got a tragedy of the commons situation here, but the public property thing, the public-private property thing doesn't really work so well, because you can't really slice up sections of the air and assign ownership to it. At least maybe you can. I mean, I don't have an answer to that. Maybe you can do that. Maybe you own everything from your house on upward into space, to the end of the atmosphere or something. Who knows? And any pollutants that cross into your property are a trespass. Like if someone dumped a bag of trash in your front lawn. Of course, the challenge there is trying to determine who was it that trespassed, whose pollutants is it that went into your air, and who therefore is responsible for the cleanup. So that ends up being very difficult. I just got a flash from a photo radar camera, and I'm going under the speed limit. Very interesting. Hopefully that flash was not me, but I did get flashed in case you saw that that flash there on the freeway. So essentially, what we have is here's a problem. The tragedy of the commons, it doesn't seem to be solvable using private property. Let's assume, for instance, that it's not solvable. It might be. I don't know. Maybe someone will come up with an ingenious idea for that. I haven't. But my solution to that would be something along the lines of pollution insurance. So let's say you have someone who you're moving into an area, and currently the air is clean. Insurance is to protect against some kind of possible future damage, where the risk can be assessed and that sort of thing. Like auto insurance is to protect you against some future possibility of getting into a collision. So you can have something like pollution insurance, where you move into an area and you say, you know what, I want to make sure that within X number of miles there's no massive amounts of pollutants. So I want to make sure that the carbon monoxide levels or the methane levels or whatever stay below X number of parts per million on my property, because that's what it's going to equal clean, fresh air for me. And so you could go to an insurance company who could provide pollution insurance, and they could say, you know what, we're going to guarantee it, and the guarantee is going to work in such a way that if this guarantee is not able to be met, for instance, if the methane levels increase beyond the threshold of your policy, or the carbon monoxide levels increase beyond the threshold of your policy, or whatever it is that you're insuring against, then we're going to pay you $2 million. Now, it's likely that you probably won't be the only one in your area that has that. Now, it's especially true if you live in an area that generally is known for clean air, like the forest. And you've got 100 neighbors in a small little rural area, and you want to make sure that air is preserved, that it's always fresh air. So you've got 100 people all paying some kind of small monthly premium in order to ensure that the air around them will be clean, and the insurance company is on the hook for each of you for $2 million. That's $200 million that they're on the hook for. So now, the insurance company is going to have an incentivized interest up to $200 million to make sure that some kind of pollution factory does not infringe on that airspace. And that could be in the form of maybe they keep track of the real estate market within a 100-mile radius to make sure that there are no industries buying the real estate there that are going to come through and create pollution factories. Not factories intended to create pollution, but factories that, as a byproduct, put out large amounts of pollution. So they do this, and when they find out something that's going to happen like this, maybe they go in and they try and buy the land. Maybe they try to outbid, because they don't need to buy the land and make money off of it the way the factory would. They need to buy the land and make it so that whatever they put into it costs them less than what they owe you if the factory were to be built and your land was polluted or your air was polluted. So essentially, they can spend up to just under $200 million to make sure that the air doesn't become polluted. That could be in the form of buying the real estate. It could be in the form of working with the company that builds the factory to make sure that whatever emissions they put out are clean. Maybe buying some kind of filtration system for them, or helping them with their processes. They are willing to spend up to what they would owe you, or just under what they would owe you, in terms of making sure that your land does not become polluted, your air doesn't become polluted. Now, if it turns out that it does become polluted and they're just not able to do it, well, then you've got $2 million. So boo-hoo for you. Anyway, I mean, I think things like this can work in the free market. I don't know that the insurance pollution is necessarily the answer, but I think that when you don't have government in the way of preventing things like this from happening, insurance is so heavily regulated. If someone wants to come along and say, I want to protect against pollution, I want to insure against pollution, the government would never license it for something like that. I mean, they're not allowed to just provide insurance for whatever they want. In a free market, they would be, and they should be able to, because if it's stupid insurance and no one wants it, then no one will buy it and they'll go out of business. That's pretty simple. So I think there are creative solutions out there that can spring up in the free market, but right now there's no necessity for them. There's no option for them. There's no opportunities popping up because we have the government in the way, not only providing a false sense of security with the APA and saying we can protect your environment for you, but with regulations preventing people with coming along with solutions and actually implementing them. So like I said, don't know if this is the solution, but I do feel confident that some genius entrepreneur will come along and put together a solution, because he has the incentive to make huge amounts of money in order to come up with a solution to this problem that millions of people think is actually a problem. Seems pretty simple there. The solution itself is complex, but when you've got millions of individual minds working on a problem because they have an incentive to make lots of money, they are going to find a solution to that problem. So again, thank you for the question. If you have any additional questions, whether they be on public policy, philosophy, libertarian solutions, free market solutions, of course, those things I always enjoy, please feel free to email those to us. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and fan us on Facebook. Stay tuned on the show. Thanks so much for tuning in.